Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Devs and a Maybe, and this is our first actual screencast episode. My name's Ed Mann, and today I'm lucky to be joined by Joe Watkins. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Ed.
Hello, and the audience won't know how much of a pain the last 3 hours have been for you trying to set this up. They'll just see this nice screencast and think, oh, it must have been a nice 20 minutes or so, but to record and edit and sort it all out. But no, it has been hell. This is how dedicated Joe is to getting this to you guys. So you should be very happy.
Yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare.
And I'm really sorry, Joe, because this was one of my ideas. Like, I kind of messaged you last week saying, would you mind, maybe thinking about, talking about, I'm really interested in setting up PHP source and getting that all set up on my box and everything, and then also maybe looking into PHP extension development. And there doesn't seem to be a definitive resource out on the internet. And I thought to myself, well, who better, to kind of get set up or just step-by-step guide than your good self. So, yeah, I mean, the floor's all yours, dude.
Well, okay. Okay, so there is actually only one good resource for writing PHP extensions.
Yep.
And it's a book written by Sarah Goldman, who works for Facebook now. But she wrote it for PHP 5. And since then, most of us are focused on PHP 7 now, but also we don't use the same version control and we've got a different workflow and that sort of thing. It's all based on Git now. So it's a good idea to put some information out there about working specifically with PHP 7, and then while we're doing that we can mention the differences between 5 and why it's better now and things like that.
That sounds awesome, dude. Yeah, and I really liked your idea of so what's going to happen is Joe's going to go through the process of installing from PHP from source to get up a development environment for you, and then build using skeleton and stuff like that a simple application, a simple extension. So yeah, I suppose the first things first then is to actually get PHP, the Git repository down. Yeah,
well, even before that, I mean, what I've done is we're using a Linux Mint virtual machine. Because Ubuntu wouldn't work for some reason. And what we're going to do is we're going to go, this is just a fresh install with no options selected or anything like that. We've not installed anything on it yet. So the first thing to do is, a lot of the time you're not actually going to have Git, which is how we check out source code. So the first thing is going to be install Git.
It's always useful to have the version control system, isn't it?
Yes, version control. Yeah. If you've got something Debian based, it will be apt-get, or Fedora will be Yum or something like that. Git's always available by name. I think it's packaged for every distribution.
Yeah, I think everyone's got it, haven't they? Really,
yeah.
All the package managers.
So that's the first thing to do, and it's going to take a minute.
Just take a minute to get all the files down. And so yeah, you're saying that originally PHP then was what version control was it? Subversion, am I right?
Oh yeah, Subversion.
And were you working on it at the time when it was using Subversion, or did you just come in when it was Git?
I had patches for it that I didn't contribute. No, not openly. Because it was so complicated. I mean, there literally used to be about 5 people that could actually okay a patch. So, I mean, it was pretty pointless to even try. But now everything's based on GitHub. I mean, anyone with a GitHub account can put pull requests into PHP and bug fixes and stuff. So it's much better.
Such an easier workflow.
Yeah, it's not just that Git's a better version control system. It's actually GitHub, because
that really makes it. Yep. The two come pass and parcel, don't they? Really now, and having GitHub and the more social aspect to it all.
Okay, so the first thing we've got to do is check out the PHP source from GitHub. When you're checking out source code, you don't really want to do that in your home directory, because it will just get filled up with junk.
Okay.
Most operating systems have got a source directory in user or opt or something like that. Go and check it out there because I said so.
So is this kind of like a not a requirement, but kind of a good practice to put these source directories in? Yep.
Because you don't want to open up your home folder to try and find your photos and that, and you've got a million folders. So you don't want that. Just put it somewhere where you're not going to need to look, because it gets full very quickly. So
so this is when you know it off by heart.
Okay. I don't have permission to write there in user source, because you shouldn't work as root. Never be tempted to, if you get permission denied, which you will, like I just did. Don't sue into root.
Yeah, don't cop out and just think, okay, I'll do everything as root then, because that's kind of defeating the purpose of all the actual work that's gone into these user exit permissions, etc.
Well, it's not just that. It's you don't want to do things like run tests as root and things like that, because they weren't meant to run as root, and they might be testing something that will work differently.
Oh, right, okay.
So you don't want to do that. You want to stay as a normal user. So damn it!
Yeah, that's the annoying thing, isn't it? And there we go. Right.
Oh, whoops. Okay, so this will smooth out in a minute when I remember what I'm doing. Okay.
There we go. Well, hey, we're in.
Sorry.
That's all right, man. So what's this doing? This is cloning for the current master branch of PHP source, then?
Yeah, the current master, which is 7. So yeah, that's the current master.
And master, is master all of the work that all of the okayed release for comments and stuff like that, RFCs and stuff, they've all been put into master. Once it's been accepted, does it then go into master, or
well,
is
not
work that's
automatically.
pending?
I mean, a person has to do it, but usually pretty quickly after they're accepted, whoever got it accepted will either get permission to do it or ask someone else with permission to do it.
And do people commit directly to master, or is there do you go through the process of like branching off, doing the work, then going for a merge after a pull request?
The workflow's a bit more complicated than that. The GitHub repository is actually a mirror.
Okay.
There's a Git server on PHP.NET systems, but the workflow is rather complicated, so I thought we'd just use the mirror today.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
But what you actually do is commit to master on the master server, which is on PHP.NET systems.
So that is only because I'm guessing that repository is only accessible via people who work on PHP, or is it just the fact that it's easier to have a mirror in GitHub as well as there that people then can pull it down from?
Oh well, it's just a convenience thing, really. We've got an ancient system of Karma,
right? Okay.
which allows you to write into specific folders in PHP source. Like a new contributor might not get access to the Zen folder, which is where all the engine stuff is, because obviously they don't need that. I mean, there's only a handful of people with Zen Karma, so it's a bit difficult to emulate our old Karma system on GitHub alone. So it's all managed on the PHP.NET systems, and then the GitHub is just a read-only mirror.
Cool. And is that updated almost immediately after master or any of the branches have been done, or is it a daily kind of thing?
I think it's within about an hour. I think, but yeah, anything that's been in PHP source for less than an hour, you don't want to use anyway.
Well, that's it.
Because usually new commits break the build because people forget stuff, or and especially now, quite a lot of stuff has changed from 5. So Yeah, just wait for it to get to GitHub sort of thing. I mean, while you're just wanting to build, you don't really need to use the PHP.NET systems. And obviously, GitHub pick up the bandwidth bill for this.
Well, that's the beautiful thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, because then you kind of you can chuck it off to be GitHub to deal with. And at the moment, I suppose, because how big is this actually? Because I mean, we're receiving it's already compressed and it's already at 150 megabytes. Like, is this the whole repository, all the history from Subversion, or did they kind of have like a snap off saying, okay, Subversion's from here, and then we're going to Git as a clean slate?
Oh, do you know what? I actually don't know. It's as simple as that. I don't know the answer to that. I think when it was because you can export a Subversion repository and import it as Git commits, but I don't know if they were squashed from version.
Yeah, and they just decided, all right, let's just get rid of this history for it. Yeah,
you know.
But Subversion isn't used at all now. Then in the PHP workflow, it's all Git.
It is.
Oh, it is. Oh, right. Okay, that makes it even more confusing.
It's still used for PHP doc. Which is the project that contains the manual, the documentation for PHP. I can't really give you a good reason why it still uses it, but it does.
Just because of legacy. I think legacy.
The PHP doc is also like DocBook, which is really verbose XML.
Yep.
And the same thing, really. It's just like a legacy thing, and there are a few people that have spent time on doing like markdown converters and stuff, but they just haven't made it into the workflow. So.
And do you think it'll be better when like that work is done, then being all in markdown?
Well, do you want to write an XML file?
That's a very good question.
If you want people to pitch in, then it's got to be as easy as possible. And the thing that people write with now is Markdown.
Yeah, it's become a default.
It's questionably a suitable format though, because a documentation page is quite complicated. It has to describe in a way that makes sense to a machine, like function signatures and parameter types and return values and things like that. So I'm not totally convinced that Markdown's the right format, but it doesn't really matter. That's our problem to solve. That's the format people want to write in. So that's probably where we're going to have to go with it. There is if you wanted to look at the manual. I mean, everyone's opened a manual page and seen a mistake and seen something that doesn't really make sense, or they think it could be described better. You can actually go to edit.php.net and log in with like your Facebook or a bunch of other different accounts and edit the manual. And then someone with permission will come along and commit your changes. And anyone can do that. And
that's very cool.
Yeah, there's like an editor, and it helps you with the markup. It's not as difficult as doing it like by yourself on the command line. But that's about the only thing that makes it easier. To do the manual.
Yeah, I love this receiving object. Sorry, it's spiking. We've gone down to 30 kb per second, then we're back up to 1 megabyte something, and now we're close to about 700.
I've actually got a 30 gig connection, and I thought this would be over in 10 seconds. It usually is.
I think it's just this day. This day seems cursed, doesn't it?
I know. Yeah, I think it might be cursed.
So you've got a 30 gigabyte connection, or 30 meg.
Yeah. 30 meg, yeah.
Yeah, that should, you'd think, especially from GitHub, you'd hope that it would just go quickly.
It usually does.
But how big is this normally then? So it's at 200 now, so it'd be about 300 megabyte maybe?
Do you know what? I don't usually look because it's over in 10 seconds. So we'll find out.
We'll find out. You see, this is it, we're all learning here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's usually over by now, and I don't get a chance to look.
Because I suppose that before, so while this is actually then cloning down, and we actually have a look at the actual structure, etc. What do you recommend then for actually like you know like, because obviously we need PHP source, but we also are going to need like a compiler and stuff like that, and then also a text editor. And I'm just wondering, what's your preference for text editor while working on PHP source?
Literally the most basic text editor. That's not a console program. I will literally use any text header, but people like IDEs and
Yeah.
So I can't really recommend one because I don't use them.
But you just for all day what use then you just use something like gedit or something like that.
Kwrite or
Kwrite.
or just a basic. I mean, syntax highlighting is nice, but that's about it really. And even the basic ones do that now for every language. So
Especially C as well, you know, which is such a mature language that they're bound to have a syntax highlighter for it.
yeah. So that's basically what I do. There isn't really many IDEs for C that are worth talking about.
There seems to be one from JetBrains that I've heard
is that the
about.
one that's called Sea Lion or something?
That's it. Yeah. Have you had a look into that?
I've heard people raving about it, but no, it's just not. It just doesn't interest me. I mean, for an IDE to be useful, it's got to support PHP, Java, C, C++, C Sharp,
The whole shebang.
Ruby, JavaScript, and once you've got all that support, the thing is crippled. Anytime you open a document, it's executing a million scanners to check syntax.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't work.
That's exactly it. Yeah, especially if you have like files like PHP files where you could have JavaScript, HTML, and PHP all in one.
Yeah,
and it just gets a bit.
Work. I can pass it with my eyes. I don't need a machine to do it, and it just slows you down. It actually does slow you down. If every time you're opening a file, you're held up by even just a second, that's a few minutes every day.
That's it, and then it all goes up. And then each week it's there,
Yeah, that makes a difference to me. I mean, I might be being petty, but I think that makes a difference. So yeah, here we go. We've got the source now.
Awesome. So it's 238 megabytes. So I was completely off.
Oh yeah, that's quite a lot, isn't it? Well, it's of course, it's every branch of PHP.
That's it. It's the full history, and but that's compressed. Then
So if we wanted to, we could build 5.6 or master without actually downloading any more stuff, which is the beauty of Git, really.
Yeah. All offline now.
Yeah. So as you were saying a minute ago, you do actually require stuff to be able to build PHP or any software really, but rather than trying to tell you which packages you need and what commands to get them, that's pretty pointless. Better to show you how to read the error so that you can deduce which software you need and how it might be named.
That sounds awesome.
That's more useful.
That sounds really good.
So okay, so the first thing we're going to do is when you download the source code, it uses something called the source code for configuration uses something called autoconf.
Okay.
When you download a release tarball, the configuration script is in the tarball, but when you check out the source code, you have to generate it. So the first thing you do is build conf.
So what is actually an autoconf then? Is it?
Well, it takes an input file and which describes it describes what you need to make a make file that works, basically.
Right. Okay. So all of like the dependencies and stuff like that.
And there's autoconf, automake, and autoreconf, and they're all like they're all related.
Right.
The autoconf, its job is to generate the script that will in turn generate the make file.
Ah, right. Okay. So they're all part together.
You've got no make file, you've got no configure script. You have to generate those. So as you can see, it says autoconf not found because it's a bare bones system. So on Debian based operating systems, this is the only time I'm going to say just install this package. But a lot of I think all systems have them, but it might be named differently. There's a package called Build Essential, which installs like software development stuff and packaging things and that will usually get you up and running with autoconf, automake, autoreconf and things like that. So we'll just try that. I actually don't know because I've not tried this on Mint before, so I could be wrong. I was not wrong. See,
There you go.
I get some C compilers and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's GCC in there, and
Yeah, I tell you what though, it didn't actually install AutoConf, so
this is only actually installed in so this is actually just installing the GCC compiler.
yeah, I think that might be a Mint specific thing because on Debian or Ubuntu,
They typically just always install all the things that you need.
Well,
So really,
yeah.
Build Essentials is kind of like the one-stop shop if you want to do like this compiling source and also then building.
Another thing you might do is a lot of operating systems have got like groups. So like you've got like games and like software development and video editing and things like that, and then it just installs all the software for it. But I think what we'll do is just install AutoConf because let's get going.
So will AutoConf also install AutoMake and also
No.
Reconf? Ah, right. So we have to then install them individually. That's why it's quite nice having the bundle ones where they install it all for you.
Okay, that's all we need from there. So now we can build conf.
Here we go. So it's not complaining anymore, and then it's building this script. So what
Yeah.
has actually this done then?
Okay, the configure script is the thing that we use to generate a make file.
Okay.
Okay, so now the configure script has got a million options with it.
This is when you're This is your preparation for actually opening it up. Wow, there is a lot, isn't there?
Yeah,
And that's only the bottom of the screen. Here we go.
As you can see, you enable and disable and choose to build shared or static every extension that comes with PHP.
So what is the difference then between the shared and static?
Okay, well, a shared is a dynamic shared object, or what Windows users call a DLL. Okay, so it's a separate file. So static means that the source code is embedded in the object for the dynamic. What would have been used for the DLL is actually embedded in the executable.
Right, and what is the benefit? Reusability seems like one.
Well, there's a it's kind of a weak argument, but if you loading a dynamic shared object is not free. You have to read the disk. You have to load it into memory. So if you've got a PHP binary that loads 30 extensions, that's going to be slower than the PHP binary that you have built them in static.
It's already got them in, and then you close that in one hit.
But the overhead disappears because once you've, like an Apache process, once you've loaded in the PHP interpreter, it doesn't get loaded again for every request. It reuses the same process and the same address.
So it's only that initial hit then. So
like you could think of it like the only place it really, really affects you is actually on the command line when you're doing CLI stuff. But yeah, that's about the only.
So what do you prefer to do then? Shared or static?
I actually prefer to. I never use packaged PHP because it always comes with weird stuff enabled and weird configuration. So if I rely on an extension all the time and I'm building a PHP binary for work, then we have that static because there's no point in trying to load it. But if there's some extensions that you shouldn't load in web servers like readline because it's not properly thread safe, and it's just not suitable for a web server because it's meant for the command line and like end curses and things like that. It doesn't make sense to load them on the web, so we'll build them shared so that
they only get used when you need them.
Yeah, we can load them. We can load them with a command line switch or a configuration file or something when we need them. Yeah, so that's what I prefer to do. I'll load everything static, build everything static that we use all the time, and then everything else that shouldn't be loaded all the time or that's dangerous to load all the time.
And does that save you then from, because in the PHP ini file, then you have like extension equal, and then you've got like blah 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 .so.
Yeah,
I guess.
it saves that as well.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, if they're static. Yeah. Obviously, some stuff you still need to write stuff in the configuration file because they've got like other directives other than loading them.
Yep.
So there's that, and some stuff can't be built static, and some stuff can't be built shared. So it'll just ignore you if you choose a stupid thing. When you configure, if you try and configure something wrong, it will just ignore you and configure it right.
Oh, that's quite nice then. So it just does. It's like, yeah, you really don't mean that.
Yeah, it might warn you, but you'll see in a minute that the text goes past so fast. I mean, you can't see it. You only really read it if it stops. Yeah, that's the first thing to do. Now, to make things simple, and because there are a million billion extensions for PHP, there's a switch called Disable All, which disables every extension that's not required.
So this would only give you then the core PHP runtime and like the standard library almost of what they have, or
some stuff has to be built like SPL, so it will just give you a very bare minimum of what you can use. But you'll find that you won't be able to use this for things like Composer and things like that.
Awesome.
So it's only useful for testers really, and for when you just want to get a build up as quickly as possible. So I'll show you that first, so we can get a build going.
That sounds awesome.
Now, other things to consider are the prefix, which is where it's actually installed. Unless you're overwriting a system installation, you probably want to put it in user or opt maybe. But that's pretty normal stuff.
Somewhere out the way.
Yeah, now, configuration files, there's the normal configuration file, and then there's a scan directory.
Yep.
So usually the configuration file will be at set php.ini, and the scan directory will be at set php.d. So we configure it like that because it's easy to understand.
That sounds awesome, yeah. So this is going to overwrite the ini file globally for all PHP ones, and then globally all for the php.d.
No, this won't actually. This only tells the binary where it should look.
Ah, right. Okay.
And then you can share your configuration between versions and whatever if you want. So you can see there we've got config file path and config file scan dir.
Yep.
So let's try that.
It's doing a lot of work now. As you say, everything's going across the screen, checking things and...
Yeah, just checking for the size of things and whether types are declared and things like that. It's all pretty boring. And then after it's done all that, it starts configuring PHP.
Awesome. So this is this the make script now then?
No,
so this is building the make script.
This is just configure, which makes the make file.
Right, and so things like saying checking sizes, like checking like on your current architecture what the size of an integer is and what the size of a double is and stuff like that kind of thing.
Yeah. But that's it needs to do that before it can create before it can configure the actual software that you're configuring. All that is just boilerplate.
Right. Okay.
Like you can see. Where's my mouse? Okay. You can see all this stuff. This is configuring MySQL support.
Yep,
it's
support,
no, and it's stuff that PHP needs. But before that, I don't know if you can be able to scroll up that far. Yeah, all this p-error poll. These are all system functions that it looks for. And then sometimes it will check things like calling convention and return convention and things like that, so that it knows the make file is going to work, so that it knows how to link things together and stuff like that.
And this is all specific to the operating system you're on and the architecture you're on, so it'd be different per. Well, it could be different per installation. of like on a different computer.
Yeah, but there's some leeway in that because obviously the release tables have got the configure script in.
Yeah, they're quite generic.
Yeah, they're quite generic. So it's a good idea to do your own, but they if you've got a release table, they come with one, and most of the time you won't have to rebuild it. But if you do get a release table and for some reason configure doesn't work, like sometimes there's slight differences in versions of AutoConf. That means that a configure script from one version won't work on a machine with a different version. It will just complain about syntax errors and things like that, and they're nonsensical. So in them cases, it's pretty obvious if you don't get past build conf, or if you can't execute the configure script, that you need to rebuild it. So you do build conf and it recreates it again. So yeah, because we haven't enabled any extensions, it hasn't come up with any errors. Like it hasn't found that some libraries are missing.
Right. Okay.
So that's because we use disable all. So then next you just do make, and then it loads the make file and it starts creating everything.
So this is creating it, but it's not actually installing it yet.
No, it's not installing it. It's just building it. On a proper machine, this is a virtual machine, so it's a virtual machine with 8 cores and 8 gigabytes of memory, but it's going to be slower than a proper machine. My machine can compile PHP like this in well under a minute.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah. So, and then what you've basically got is it's nearly done. So what you've got now is a CLI version of PHP, but nothing's installed, as you said. So the next thing to do now would be either install it if you're really experienced and you know what you're doing, then install it. If you don't, and you're not sure whether you've built it right or you've changed something and you want to know whether it works, PHP is distributed with tests. So we'll just have a look at those. Okay, so in the tests directory, which is there, okay, we've got a bunch of folders, and then each one's got a bunch of these PHPT files. So we just open a random one, just so we know what they are. Okay, so they're a made-up file format, made up for PHP. You describe the test, you put a file in there.
You what expect out of it? Okay,
you tell it what it expects, and then you can run these. You should run these actually, because we're constricted for time. You can tell it to run a set of tests.
Right,
so if you
only the ones. Yep.
Yeah, so if you change something in Zend, you can tell it to just run the Zend tests, and so that's usually quite quick, and it gives you an idea that you've done everything right. And obviously, if you've made a change, you've written tests to test your change, and so you need to write them. So you can see there, no tests have failed that were not expected to fail. Expected fails are a bit weird. The reasons vary, and some of them seem indefensible, really, but usually you should expect all tests to pass if everything's normal. So at this point, you've got a working, very basic PHP installation. So you can do make install.
So yeah, because that's one thing I was going to say. Just so you've got make, and then you've that's then created the SAPI CLI PHP executable.
And if you configured other like an Apache module where they built all that as well.
And is there like a default location where these are all put? Are they always put into the SAPI and then where whatever or?
Yeah, if you look at the SAPI directory there.
Oh wow, yeah, we've got quite a few things here.
Yeah, you've got like PHP debug and CLI and Apache 2, and so that's actually that's a lot less than there was in PHP 5. In PHP 5 there's about 40 SAPIs for web servers that haven't been used for like 50 years or something. So not 50, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, if you built PHP debug, it would be in SAPI PHP debug, but we didn't. We only built CLI, so you can see that
that it's running.
That's the only one that's got a PHP binary in there. So when you do make install, which you should do as root, so sudo make install, this will install your tested
awesome
build.
And this is installing it on the actual on your actual machine now.
Yeah, now it's actually installed, so that if I do that, it's
installed. And because you've installed it in user, then user
it's in
bin.
path.
Yep, it's in the path. Yep.
Okay, so now you've got a working PHP installation, but it's got no modules, so it won't actually do anything.
So these are the default ones that come with it all. You have to have standard core, date, PCRA, the regular expression, reflection, and stuff like that.
Yeah, these are the ones that you have to have. I mean, standard is basically every function that we use, like strlen and things like that. That's all in standard, and so you've got to have those. Reflection is. I don't know why that's required. Actually, I can't really. That's not defensible. But PCRE, a language that can't work with strings in any way, is a bit pointless, isn't it? So yeah, they're the basic ones. But like, you can't run Composer with it because Composer requires things like tokenizer and JSON and things like that. So before we carry on, what we'll do is we'll add some useful extensions like tokenizer and
awesome
JSON and C-type, and then you can see how you enable and disable.
And this is so the ones that are in the core now, so your core date, your reflection, your SPR, they're all statically being compiled. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make ones that are shared ones. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, now, there's a difference between some extensions have got this switch with disable and enable.
Okay.
And others have got with and without.
Oh, right, okay.
Now, the difference is that extensions that have got enable and disable, they come with everything. They don't need external libraries. So C-type has got everything in the C-type directory that it needs to build. But other extensions like XML type ones, they need libxml. So you have...
they require an external dependency.
Yeah, so they will be with and without. So the XML RPC requires libxml, so it says with rather than enable. Okay, so that's why there's a enable and disable and with and without. Yeah, so there's that.
And then this nano.nice file. So this is something that's been created by config, it says, and then it seems like a shell script.
It's the last configure command you used, so that you don't have to remember it. So that if you change something, you patch
that's
in PHP,
nice.
You can make clean and config.nice rather than configure, and then remembering all these options is quite hard.
No, that's really nice.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so we try JSON shared. I think we've still got JSON. Yeah. Okay. And if you want to know whether it's enable or disable or...
You just do a grep on it, and then you should be able to work out. That's cool.
And then it will read remake the make file, and then make will build your new extension.
Ah, awesome. So then we have to do a make and a make install again for it to be able to work.
Yeah.
And it knows how to reinstall over previous ones, etc.
Yeah, I mean, if you tell us a Linux to do something as root, it'll do it. So when you tell it to install as root, it doesn't matter what's in its way; they're going to get over it.
It will just nuke it.
Yeah. Okay, the J after make. That's to use many processors.
Right, as many cores as you have. So you said your virtual machine had 8 cores, so you've then put it on 8, so it's using them all, or if it can use them all. Yeah,
and the make file is written in such a way that it supports that. A lot of C programs you can't actually use more than one. You can't use more than one processor because of the way the make file is written. It can't make independent jobs. But the PHP make file is pretty good, and
that's awesome.
I can use 16 on my proper computer. There's no problem. So then we've got PHP with C type, and JSON should be shared.
And where does it actually share these then? Is there a location where?
Oh yeah, look, if you see install shared extensions here.
Yep, it's popped in there.
PHP, and then this is no debug or debug, non-ZTS or ZTS, which is Zen thread safety.
Yep.
And then this is the Zendapi version number.
Ah, right, okay.
So that is so that you can have lots of sets of extensions, and they don't get in the way. Because obviously, an extension built for this version of PHP won't necessarily work
on another one.
So that's the thing to remember. So now we've got JSON shared. So if we do that, we can see it's loading and it's shared. So the thing to do would be create a
boom, and then it's automatically doing it.
Yeah, so that's how you build and configure shared extensions and static extensions. So now we've got a still quite useless installation of PHP, but that's enough to do the next bit, which is going to be create an extension. So the thing to do now is in the ext directory, which is where all the extension source is.
Yep.
You can see all the different extensions there. There's an extskel script which generates a skeleton.
Okay.
Now this is useful because C headers are quite difficult to remember how to lay them out. So we're going to call it sum. Oh, I'm terrible. Okay, so now in sum, we've got our...
It's giving you a lot of files here.
Yeah. So, I'll tell you what we've got. The test directory is obviously them PHP files.
Yep.
That sum.php is just a convenience script. It's just got some test code in it that was generated by the thing. So if you execute it with your new extension loaded, it will tell you what functions are in it and things like that. Sum.c and PHP sum.h, they're the actual source files.
So they're the real core of the extension there.
Yeah. This experimental file, this is just a practice that we've got. When we've got a new extension, if we stick a file that says experimental in it, and then we keep it up to date with changes while it's still being developed, and it tells people you might not want to rely on this the way it is because we're still working on it. Not that anyone actually knows that other than me. So it's good practice to just leave that there, really. And then the credits file, you write your name and email in, and if it ever got imported into PHP source, you'd show up in the credits. So config.m4 and config.w32. Now, these are the autoconf files that are going to generate your make file.
Right. So for the process,
sorry, they're going to generate your configure scripts.
So and then in turn then make the make file.
Yeah. So the M4 one is the one that's actually the Unix one, and the W32 one is for Windows. So you can ignore that. But so you can ignore that while you're working on Linux, and working on Windows is a whole other subject. So if we just look at the generated, oh wait, I'll get a proper text.
So we've built up PHP. We've had to use configure, and then we've make, and then we've done a make install. But before that, actually, we did a make test just to make sure that the make that we did do was correct. And so that was actually for PHP. But then any extension that we want to install, then we have to do a make again, config. No, do we have to do a config? Well, we do have to do a config again. Sorry, config of PHP, and then it will make and actually use the extension. But also with custom extensions that we've made here, so we then have to go through the process again of make install, config, make install.
Yeah, but before you do that, these files are generated and they don't work, so you've got to read them. So this is the autoconf file that was generated for the new extension. If you just read it, it actually explains what everything is. It's all just delete what's not applicable. So we're not going to have dependencies, so we just need an enable. Okay, and so then this here, what I've highlighted.
Yep.
When you can configure an extension on its own, but also if you copy an extension into PHP source in the ext directory, then when you build conf, it picks up this so that you can build
with it or enable it.
All of PHP. So this is what presents your enable or disable or with or without to the builder of PHP. Okay, so we don't need any of this. We're not going to have any dependencies. We don't need any of that.
So dependencies on external libraries and stuff like that. Is that correct?
Yeah? Yeah.
Like libxml and stuff like that.
Yeah. But that's rather extremely complicated. So we can just.
Yep, that sounds cool.
Skip over that. Okay, so then now we've got. That's all you need for it to work. Enable or disable. Enable or with, and this macro here, which is PHP new extension. The name, the source. If you've got more than one source file, you can list them there. That is whether you want to build it shared. So either static or a DSO. But obviously, when you're outside of the source tree and not building PHP, it's always going to be shared.
Yep.
And this is just some internal junk that you don't need to know about. Okay, so here we have, and this is all generated from a skeleton. You can delete everything that doesn't apply, but it does tell you a little bit about how to use INI entries in your extension and how to use kind of resources.
No, it's really well documented, actually, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but you don't really want to use a resource, do you?
No.
And then, so the anatomy of this file. Okay. Don't worry about that. That was generated, and then this is the actual start. These are header files that were installed on the system when you done make install.
Okay.
And you can see there, even extensions install header files. So if your extension needs to use some other extension, so long as the header files are installed, you can do that. And then this includes the header file which was generated for your extension. Now, in here, we've got the things that are important. are this, the Zen module entry, and the pointer, this is generated, and it's always going to look like that, and it's really strange name, and you can't, not really justifiable, but that's just the way it works for history's sake. You can pretty much ignore all that. Now, module globals. Globals are horrible, as we all know, but as a matter of fact, you do need to use them when you're writing extensions a lot of the time.
Okay.
Because C libraries are not object orientated, and they do have state, and so you do have to manage it, and so a lot of the time you'll have like a context of some kind in your module globals. So you can you can read through all that because it's been on the screen for ages now. And these are accesses. We're not going to use globals. That's a whole another subject. Today we're just going to write a simple
PHP function. And so with headers, so this is C now, obviously, and with so the header files are declaration of what the C implementation actually provides. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah,
like it tells.
They are what's called forward declarations. So there's no actual code in there. There's prototypes and things like this X down here. It's forward declaration. It says in some other file.
There's going to give you this, and that allows you then to compile and create something without actually having access to the real implementation. It's like an interface almost, just saying, look, I know that I'm going to get this when you pass it in. Yeah, this is going to exist, and it's going to have this methods and this return type, these parameters, etc.
And like if you want to export some of your functions, this is where you do it from, because you can't. It's so that another extension can use them, because another C file can but shouldn't include C. It should only ever include headers. There's code in Zen that actually does include C, but ignore that.
Okay.
Because it's part of Opcache.
Bad practice and stuff.
Yeah, it's horrible practice. But when they wrote Opcache, they never thought anyone was going to look at it because it was closed source.
And then it's become an open thing now.
Yeah, now it's become an open thing. We can all point it and say that's horribly written. But yeah, don't ever try and include C because it will just be weird. So yeah, that's what the headers are. So this is C. So we just delete what isn't applicable, or you can leave it there. I mean, it's
not going to hurt. But those are like the INI stuff. So we don't care about that at the moment.
Yeah, just remove just so you can concentrate on what we're doing. So this here, I know it looks pretty cryptic, but this is actually useful. These and these tell C editors that are decent that you can fold that.
Ah, right. So, okay, that this is a whole block that it in itself.
Yeah, and this is used to generate like documentation, or can still be by some software, but it's a good idea to keep writing all these protos
like PHP docs, and it defines like the return type, the parameters and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean the tooling that we've got at the moment doesn't really use all the information you put in there, but it uses some of it, and it gives you a good skeleton. So it's a good idea to fill that.
No, that sounds cool. And to also keep it up to date.
Yeah. So we're just going to write a single function called sum.
And so this PHP function, that looks like a macro then, a C macro?
Well, it is, yeah. Because the actual function's got to accept things like a return value and some other stuff. So we just use the macro PHP function, and it gives you the correct signature for the function.
And this is like the good practice is to use these macros, the high level. Yeah, you have to. Okay, then.
Yeah, because they might change, and you don't want to get into that.
No.
And the function's not actually called sum; it prefixes it with a name and gives you the right prototype. So you have to use them. It's just not worth trying to do it yourself. So we're basically going to write array sum.
Okay.
Because that allows you to see how arrays work a little bit, and accept an argument and return a different kind of argument. So it gives you at the very least, that's what you're going to need a function to do. If you're thinking about interfacing with some C code, that's the very least
That's
you're
it.
going to need to do.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to start. So. Okay, so the first thing in the, let's just pretend this is empty a minute. The first thing in the function body is this API function Zen pass parameters. It takes the number of arguments and then a specifier string. So now a specifier string, there's, if you look in Zen, and there's lots of readmes. See readmes NVM thing like that. Well, it's actually not in here.
Oh yeah, readmes. There we go.
Parameter passing API. Okay, so these are the type specifiers. Okay, so
Oh wow. Yep.
you can have a look at those for yourself. You can read them on the screen there. So you get each one of you use one of them for each argument. So we're going to accept an array.
So the PHP function. So typically, obviously, we declare it all on one line. But when you're building actually a PHP extension function, you then need to have the PHP function. You define the name of it, and then you use this if block, and then define these are what I'm expecting to get from the user, and then you can assign them and stuff. I'm guessing.
Yeah. So if you see that, you need it tells you what the specifier is, what the type is, and then what kind of container it needs. See?
Yeah.
So what we need is a zval.
So this is a pointer to a zval. Then this is.
Yeah. Now, this returning here, this is the convention. This is the convention that means that whenever you execute a function in PHP and you get null, this is why. If the parameters are wrong and you always get null back.
Right. Because this is actually returning it.
So by convention, you should do this, but obviously people like exceptions, and if you want, you can throw an exception there. But if you use this and pass parameters, it will emit warnings when it comes across invalid arguments. So there's another function that allows you to do it quietly without emitting warnings, so that if you want to, you can throw an exception if it fails. Digging around the source code will tell you how to do that. It's a bit advanced for today, so we'll just carry on.
We'll keep it as it is.
Yeah. Now, so at this point, we've got here input, and we know it's an array. So the next thing we want to do is loop over the array and add up all the values.
Yep.
So we're going to need a counter. We declare up there. Now, some compilers will allow you to declare this here.
Okay.
But it's not compatible with all of them, so don't do it. Only ever declare at the top.
At the top.
Yeah. If you can put in a block like this in C and declare here, if you want. But obviously it means more indentation, and you don't really want to indent more than 3 times. Another thing to say is, it's, as just like in any language really, it's a good practice to return early. So here we return as quickly as we can, because it's failed, so we know we get to here.
We want to get out there as quick as possible.
Yeah. Whereas there's a tendency to do this and embed conditions, and this quickly leads to really
indented. Yep.
So you definitely want to avoid that in C, and definitely if it's code that you might put forward for inclusion someday, because it will be rejected. Okay, so now we've got our array, and we need a position.
Ooh.
Okay. Now these can be looked up in the source code. Now, an awesome tool for looking at source code, PHP source code, is located here, which is lxr.php.net, and you can choose a version and tell it what you want to look for, a definition or a symbol, or just a search, and then it will find it for you. So you
that
can
is
see,
awesome.
yeah, it is quite cool, and that's a very, very useful tool. So if you want to know what something means that I've written, look it up on there, and you'll be able to find it. If I haven't explained it. So first of all, now, again, these are API functions that you can look up. This here, this Z and then
Array P.
Yeah, array value P. There's lots of these, like Z str val P will give you the string value. Z str len P will give you the string length. And lval P will give you the long, and so on. So a zval can be any of PHP's type, any of the types. So these are how you access the specific data that we.
Yep.
It's an array, so we're using this rval thing.
And this gives us a pointer to the value inside that array of input.
Yeah, so input is a zval, and within the zval is a pointer to the array. But the P here is to say that input is a pointer.
Ah, right, okay.
If input were this, then the macro would be that.
And you would ignore, yes, you wouldn't then do anything. So it's telling you what the input is actually going to give you, and how they need to access it.
Yeah. So how they need to access it is within this last bit. So that's actually really simple now, because PHP 7, this used to be common. This used to be common as well.
Yeah.
And so you'd have Z, rval, PPP, and it was just so annoying. And the cognitive overhead of working out how many levels of indirection any particular variable had was enormous. Especially, not so much maybe in extensions, but when you're actually looking at source code, PHP source code.
Trying to reason it must have been a pain.
It was quite hard. But now that doesn't happen anymore, to the point that the Z, rval is not actually defined anymore.
Oh, wow.
So it used to be, but it's not defined anymore because we don't do that anymore, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. But that's one difference. So now the item here, okay, that I've declared, when you're looping through the array, each item is obviously going to be represented by as a pointer to a zval as well.
Yep.
I'm getting lost in my own commas. And then
the position is it? So the Zend hash internal pointer reset ex function, that is actually a real C function.
Yeah.
And then the uppercase ones like Z array P and stuff like that, array val P, they're all macros. Yep.
Yeah. But it's actually just convention. I mean, a macro can have lowercase letters, and for complicated reasons, sometimes something that looks like a function will actually be a macro. Now, one of the reasons for that is because I'm not sure if this will actually be one. Let's have a look. No, that's not actually one. We're going to be just looking there. See here. Now, the reason for this is that sometimes backwards compatibility, but also, see this send file line DC.
Yep.
This sends in the file and line that is executing, so that if that function raises a message, it knows the file and line to report.
To actually display. Yep.
Yeah. So pretty complicated and quite boring, but that's sometimes you might not find it where you think you're going to find it because it is a macro, but it looks like a function.
It looks like a function because they're trying to make it look like a function just with added on. You should use it like you would a function.
Because otherwise we would have to pass around this send var line.
That's it. Yeah, and it would just make the code unwieldy. So what this is doing, kind of like a traditional what we like a for in kind of loop. So you're getting like initially what you're doing is you're getting the current position. You're getting the internal. So you reset it.
You're getting the current position, then you're getting you're
getting the first position, wherever the position is of the first item, like I equals 0, and then you're going through, and then you're going to say the item's equal to that I plus plus almost type thing.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's like a normal for loop. There's actually some fancy macros in PHP 7 that you can use as well,
which help abstract it a bit more.
Yeah, but. It's not. You might as well learn the.
No, absolutely. I think you might as well know the behind.
And then the macros are a shortcut, and there's loads of. There's like 100 different ones for. The hash table can get quite complicated, so the simplest way to explain it is using these. But you can store specific things. You can store things that are not specific to PHP. So not a zval basically in a hash table. So there's lots of different accessors. So the simplest way to look at it is just with an array of zvals, which is the variable type. But yeah, a hash table can get quite complicated, which is why the hash header there is quite
beastly.
Yeah, I mean we're only there, and it's got loads of in. These are the macros I was talking about.
Oh wow!
But you can go and read about that and learn about it once you've got an interest or a need to know about them. So now we're in the body of our loop. We know that this is an array, but we don't know what it's an array of. Now, because I'm in C, if I try to read this item here, if I try to read, say, a string value, and it's actually an integer or integer or long or whatever, then it'll crash. You'll save file. So you have to be careful in C always to check the type
before you do any action on it.
Yeah, because unexpected behaviour and crashes will ensue if you don't. So
here we're making sure that it is definitely a long. So is this almost like long? It's long. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So Z type P will get the type from.
And it isn't a value like a string that can be coerced into a long. It has to be an
No, in
actual
C you can't do that.
Yeah.
If you want to coerce, you have to use the API functions to coerce. You have to check and
Yep.
know what type you're working with. A lot of the time, you'll see in extensions, there's a function called convert to string, because everything's a string, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, the pass parameters won't be specific. It will just accept Z vowels, and then it will convert everything to a string before it starts working on them. But this is really messy. If you can work with a particular type, then work with that type.
Yep.
So okay, so you can see there we're just incrementing the total by the long
The value.
item, and then we return the total at the end.
And all of these we're clearly specifying. Look, we know now it's a long.
Yeah.
Because it is a long. Then we do Z, L val, P. You know, it's a pointer to a long value in this item. Get it? Put it in my current stack total, and then return the long.
Yeah, it's that simple. And then a lot of the time, if you get the wrong type, you want to throw an exception, and there's Zen throw exception or Zen throw exception X. Now, X takes this X thing. You'll see that a lot. It's where we've come up with a perfectly good like Zen hash internal pointer reset, and then later on someone said, yeah, but shouldn't it work like this? And because of backwards compatibility, we can't just use the better version. We've got to keep the old version and call the better version X.
Oh,
so you
man.
see that a lot. Like send throw exception doesn't take a let me have a look here. It doesn't take a class entry, so you can't throw a custom exception. So there's send throw exception. Oh, wait, no, what? There's a difference though. Hold on. Oh yeah, Zen throw exception X allows you to format the message
Oh, wow.
like a printf,
Yep.
which should have been the way to do it in the first place.
But because you can't get away from it, you have to now actually have a different method for it.
Yeah, because of the order of these and because of the way var args work in C, it doesn't work. So a lot of the time there'll be a X version of most stuff. I think actually you can just pass null to that because it will choose. The code there, exception message and code. I think when we created exceptions, we just thought, yeah, everyone else has got a code, but we didn't actually have like a standard. There's no codes, is there? I mean, people just use 0.
Yep.
No one ever uses it. So do what you will with that. So that's an example of what you might do if you get an unknown type. So now we've got our extension with our one function, and here this function entry, some functions. This describes all of the functions that you've got.
Okay, that are globally available. So once you've included this extension, this is going to be available.
Yeah. This here where it says null is an argument info structure. We won't go into that now. It's quite complicated and more code. But that describes that's what reflection uses to describe your function.
Ah, right. So you're actually because you're able then to decide what it should display it as and stuff like that.
It's always a good idea to do that, but finding out how to do that is not difficult.
Yep.
Just go and look at some other functions in the source code, and you'll see how the arginfo is put together. So we won't do that now. So then we've got, and then this was all generated. So that's all we need to do, and we should have our working. Okay, so the first thing to do back in the source code is PHPIs.
Ooh, PHPIs. I like the name of that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And then that generates your configure.
It's very similar to how, and this is actually making it based on. Oh, we're having a
Oh, whoops. Sorry, I made a mistake. I'm still in version 5 mode. Version 5, you had to pass this in, and version
And
7,
now you don't need to.
Okay. And I've missed out a colon somewhere. Put one in somewhere. Okay, so then we've got our extension.
Well, hey. This is going to install it with our currently compiled PHP version, and then it's installed it in the shared extensions. And in theory, yeah, we should be able to just...
So you can see it's loaded there.
Well, hey.
Okay.
Now we've got it. We've got it in our... It's loaded up, automatically loaded up, and we can actually start using it. Well, hey, very cool.
Okay.
And there it is. That's so awesome.
So that's that. That's
That is great, man. So yeah, so we've been able to compile PHP source, make a version like a dumbed down version that allows us to actually do development on. We've been able then to create it from using the skeleton, a simple PHP extension that then does the array sum, which then uses iteration over the hash table using the special methods that are available, and also storing the pointers to each of the values, the input and the items, and then being able to return it as a long, and also making sure that it is actually what we're getting. We analyze each value to make sure that they're actually longs before we use them. I suppose a long could actually be both an integer or a double. Like, am I right in thinking a float? Sorry, so like
it'll lose precision.
It'll lose precision. Oh, so
no. A double's a distinct type.
Just double's a distinct type. Sorry, yeah. Long is integer. Long is like a bigger integer, like a 64-bit integer.
Yeah, is long there? It should actually be is int. But we are terrible and we used long for ages. And then when PHP 7 was done, someone said, let's just drop this. It's not long anymore. Let's call it what it is. And everyone, including me, complained because I was already going to have to do like a million hours of work. And it was like, well, I don't need to do that. Yeah. I know what is long means. You know what it means.
We can kind of get away with the fact of let's just assume, the amount of hours it's going to take for everyone to change stuff just for like that. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, so that's basically the what you need to know.
Well, that's awesome.
Things to look at, so that you get an idea of how. Oh, apparently, I can't remember stuff. Things to look at, so you get an idea of how. ZVal struct. So this is the ZVal.
So this is actually the internal data structure of it, working out.
Yeah. Now, in PHP 7, for an explanation of what all this is, go and read Nikita Popov's blog. If you're interested in that,
I'll put that in the show notes. Yep.
This is the actual value, and you can see. Well. Okay, so you can see the value can be long, double, and all these different stuff, all these different things as well. So that's what to do. I mean, if you see something that you don't understand, put it into that LXR. And
that seems to be a really, really good source to be able to quickly find documentation.
And it updates real quickly with the latest changes, and you can search all the different versions, all the different branches, and even branches that were unreleased, and PECL extensions as well. So if you know of a PECL extension that does something similar, you can just go read it.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a very good resource for internals programmers and extension developers.
Well, thank you very much, man. That is really awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's given everyone, like the listeners, the viewers, and me, like a really good rundown of how to get set up and started with actually PHP extension development.
yeah, it's not. I haven't really gone into super big detail because time's a factor.
Oh, absolutely. I think getting up and running. No, you've done more than a good enough job, like explaining it all really well, and I really appreciate. Thank you for the time.
That's okay.
And also thank you for the 3 hours spent beforehand as well, which the audience won't know about. Oh man.
Yeah, that was stressful.
Oh, I can only imagine, dude. Right. Okay, then, audience. Oh, sorry. Is there anything else you'd like to mention while on air?
Just one thing actually. Now, everyone thinks that PHP needs the next new extension.
Yes,
What PHP really needs is for people to fix bugs. There are many. Now, if you know a little bit of C, and you don't even really need to know C, all you need to be, when you saw that code I was writing a minute ago, you need to be confident that you can understand what that means, even if you couldn't write it. If you go to bugs.php.net, there are a massive list of 5,000 bugs that are opened. So if you feel like doing anything, getting to know how PHP works and what it can and can't do, so that you can write your own extensions, this is where to start.
Absolutely.
Because I wouldn't have known how to write any extensions if I hadn't spent so much time fixing bugs. The kinds of extensions you can write without knowledge of Zend are pretty boring, and they're mostly done. They're like libxml layers and things like that. They're already done, really. The really clever stuff requires that you have a knowledge of Zend, and this is how you get it, by fixing bugs. So that's definitely a place to go.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree there. And I'll put all this in the show notes.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, listeners and viewers, thank you for the first episode of 3 Days and a Maybe, like screencast thing. Hopefully we'll do more. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, we'll speak to you and see you next week. Goodbye.